Which takes us to the media. There are so many different types of media that you can utilise when it comes to advertising, and that's, once again, why you don't choose your media at the start. You really are spoilt for choice, and there's not a lot of point in picking the wrong one. What I'd like to do is go over some of the main types that you're likely to encounter. If you're just starting out from an advertising point of view, you might want to focus your advertising towards these different types of media because they're proven. They get good results and they're the easier ones to use when you are actually just starting out. I'll also go over some common mistakes that people make when it comes to their advertising campaign, and I'll also come back to these media to give you an idea of some ballpark costs and some recommended frequencies. Direct mail. One main media type you should focus your attention towards is direct mail. Some people call it junk mail, which I actually think is a bit harsh. It's only junk mail if it doesn't work or if you're not interested in it. I've got to tell you, when a Woolworths or a Coles catalogue comes into our house, my family reads them front to back. Maybe food's a bigger basic need in my family than most. Catalogues do get read and they do work. If they didn't work, we wouldn't still be using them all of these years later. Event sponsorship. Sponsorship of local events is another one that you should consider. But one of the things that you need to consider when you do this is that just sponsoring the event is not the end of the job. In fact, it's really the beginning. When you sponsor a local event, you have to do a lot of work to gain an advantage from it. But we'll come back to that later. Newspapers. Newspapers, both local newspapers and national newspapers. Now, which one you use depends upon where your business is based, and it also depends upon the quality of the local newspaper as well. In a market like Sydney, for instance, there are newspapers called suburban dailies that come out. They're local newspapers, and they do genuinely get read, and they are good value. And of course, there are the bigger newspapers in the Sydney market as well, which are the major dailies. However, in smaller markets, some of these local newspapers are actually run by the local council. So these suburban dailies are run by the local council. In fact, some of the local councils own them. They're not anything more than propaganda rags for the council, and their readership is very low. So there's not a lot of point in using them for advertising. You don't want to confuse as well what is readership and what is distribution. Distribution is the number of newspapers that they print. Readership is the number of people that actually read them. Just because you've printed something doesn't mean that somebody reads it. And also, it doesn't mean that only one person reads everything that goes out. In-house promotions. In-house promotions that you run on your own premises are definitely worthwhile. We'll come back to the who's, what's and where's of that later on. Signage. Billboards and signage are very important. Signage in any business is absolutely critical, but you really need to know what you're doing. Television. Once again, television really depends on your market. If you're in Melbourne or Sydney or Brisbane, the average 30-second commercial costs about $20,000, and then you need to be a reasonable sized business to be able to afford it. However, in regional markets, television is quite affordable, and for some businesses, even cable television can be quite affordable. Keep in mind that cable has a single footprint, which means that it only puts one broadcast out to the whole country, so you can reach a very wide market, especially if you've got online product to be sold. Which brings us to online. Online directories are definitely worth considering. Also, a website is fantastic, and social media can be very useful too. Facebook is one that I would be concentrating my efforts towards from a social media point of view. Local online search like Gumtree or AdWords, that sort of thing, also very worthwhile. Radio, well, and of course radio, you need to consider radio for a lot of businesses. Radio has become the entry point, even though they possibly should have tried other mediums first. So they are some of the media that you should be considering when it comes to advertising. And as I said, we'll come back and talk more about it in a little while. The last part of your advertising process is test and measure. This is one of the areas in which the greater majority of businesses really let themselves down. They don't test and measure. And what I mean by test and measure is making sure that you understand as much of the contributing factors to the success or failure of any campaign while it's happening. Like the weather. Are there significant events happening in the community? Did the government just announce a budget, or was an election called? All of these things actually affect the ability of the advertising campaign to work, so you need to take note of these things. You need to note when the campaign started and when it finished, and how many times the ad was run during that period, so that you can actually measure the effectiveness of the advertising during that period. For example, you might be running a radio campaign. One of the ways radio stations like to sell their media is called BMADE. It's an acronym. It stands for breakfast, morning, afternoon, drive, evening. They're the different shifts on the radio station. They like to sell it that way because from a yield management point of view, it makes their life easier. Since while they say the spots are going to be spread across breakfast, morning, afternoon, drive or evening, they're not guaranteeing you an even spread. What you should be demanding is an even spread for your campaign. Some stations are very good at this and some aren't. But you need to be measuring which of those shifts is more successful for you. For example, if you're targeting young families and you've only bought breakfast spots, then that might not be as successful for you, because for the most part, young families are very busy during the breakfast shift trying to get their kids ready for school. So they're listening to the radio, but they're not necessarily paying attention to it. It can form background noise, a bit of entertainment. Your effectiveness in getting a message cut through is actually diminished by what these people are doing. And it comes back to making sure that you understand the profile of who your customer actually is. There's not much point in advertising in the sports section of a newspaper if you're trying to target young urban female professionals. You need to understand these things about placement so that your message gets through. With direct mail, you may only be successful with customers who live within a geographic boundary of, say, 3 kilometres from your business. If you decide to direct mail an entire city, you might not be successful because your customers might not be willing to travel that sort of distance to come to your business, depending, of course, on how far that distance is. So they're all things that you need to consider, and that's why testing and measuring is so important. If you're not doing it, how do you compare one campaign to another? It stops you from being able to analyse properly whether or not your campaigns have been successful or whether it's failed, or for what reasons it might have been a success or a failure. So for that reason, you really must test and measure all of the time. It's vitally important, not just for the success of your campaign, but for your ability to spend money wisely and accurately into the future. So let's have a look at some of the common marketing mistakes that businesses make when it comes to advertising and marketing. Some of these we've already gone over, but I'm going to go over them again because they really are very easy mistakes to make. As we've spoken about already, don't write an ad the way that you would like it to be written. If you're writing it for yourself, you're not writing it for your customers. It needs to be written in the language of the people you are targeting. You really have to do research when it comes to advertising. You can't assume something just because logically it seems right to you. You really should do some research. In fact, research is something you should do at the very start of the campaign before you make the move to spend the dollars. It's wiser to spend your money on a bit of research, and these days it's so easy to do. If you've got email addresses for your customers, you can be emailing them a questionnaire that will answer questions about your business. Just remember not to ask questions that lead them to an answer that you want to receive. Ask them a question that is open, that will solicit an answer that is true and accurate about how they feel, not about how you wish they would feel. One ad, one message. A very common mistake is overcrowding your message. By overcrowding, I mean trying to pack too much information into it. One ad, one message. If you stick to that rule, you'll have a much increased degree of success. If you try to put too much into the ad, it becomes confusing to the person that you're trying to target. and just fails. Don't set and forget. Setting and forgetting your ads is also another very common mistake. Just because something's worked once doesn't mean it will work again. If you don't test and measure, if you don't analyse the quality of the message, whether or not your target has changed, and also whether or not your target thinks your business has changed. If you're trying to use it again because it's worked in the past, then you will get a diminishing result. Life changes. People move on. Another mistake is to do with something called the unique selling position or unique selling proposition. And by unique selling proposition, what I'm talking about is the unique thing about your business that makes people come to it or makes them respond to an ad. What is it that's unique about this ad that makes them respond to it and come and buy from you? Now, if you don't know what that unique selling position is, then once again, the returns on your ad will be diminishing. And it can't be things like, we give good service, we're always happy. These are expected reasons. If a business that I'm going to buy from doesn't offer great service, I'm not going there. Life has moved on these days. You can't just say, we have the best service. It's got to be something that's unique to your business. It's got to identify to your prospective customer why they should come to you rather than to your competitor, or why they should continue to be your customer rather than moving off to your competitors. It's about identifying what makes you genuinely different. That's something you really need to sit down and spend some time thinking about and come up with an accurate answer. Because if you don't know what's unique about your business, then you've actually got a very big problem. You need to work out why your business is different, what you're offering to your customer, what you are solving for your customer, and why it's different from all of your competitors. And that's going to be a real reason, not a fluffy reason, something genuinely real. Once you've identified that, then you can come up with a unique selling position that will keep you ahead of your competitors. Sell benefits, not features. I realise I'm repeating myself, but I'm going to do it anyway. Don't sell features, sell benefits. Your advertising must sell the benefits to your customers. It must sell the solution to their problem. If you cannot say, what's in it for me, and have a sensible, real answer, then you are not going to attract customers. Your prospects and customers need to know how your products and service will make them happier. It will make their life easier, will make their working conditions more convenient, or make their kids safer. Without doing this, you won't be able to effectively close a sale and retain them as ongoing customers. Check your hook. Something else I know that I've mentioned is to do with the headline or the hook of the ad. A lot of people make a mistake of not doing this, not realising the importance of it. A strong headline in your ad will grab the attention of your prospective customer in seconds. One of the things you should always do when it comes to your advertising is show your ad to a friend or a colleague to see how effective it is. Don't be the arbiter of what is right or what is wrong. By all means, listen to your own gut, but show it to other people, get their opinion. Don't let it turn into a committee. Just talk to the people whose opinions you value and who know the way your customers think. Know your strategies. Another mistake people make is that they don't determine which of their marketing strategies work best. So they don't know the difference between two different ads that they run in the newspaper. I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but you'll sometimes see companies running two ads in different parts of the newspaper. And this is because they're trying to target different people in the newspaper. It's very rare that the ads are exactly the same. Sometimes you make those tweaks to get the messages through to the different targets inside the newspaper. Remember, if you're splitting your advertising between two mediums, you need to modify the ad so that it's designed for the medium and it isn't a duplication of itself. But if you do that, then make sure you've got a way to test which one worked better, whether it was the newspaper ad or the direct mail that came out at the same time. One of the ways you can do this is advertise the same product in two different places for two different prices and see what happens when people come and ask for a specific price. That's going to tell you which medium is working better for you. Test and measure. I can't stress it enough. Keep your staff up to date. Another mistake a lot of people make in both their marketing and in their business in general is that they actually make it hard for customers to do business with them. You've got to make sure that you and your staff are both customer focused with a complete product knowledge. There's actually a very famous case of a large store in Hobart that ran a very expensive campaign to attract a customer that was different to the type of customer that they traditionally brought in. They were actually trying to shift their focus to a new customer base and attract a new level of customer to their business. But they forgot to tell their staff. So their staff were looking for their old customers walking in their door, and when their new customers, who were outside of their traditional target, were coming in, they weren't focusing on them and making sure that they were directing them to the product that they were trying to sell in that expensive advertising campaign. The result was they spent a lot of money and had a failure, all for the fact that they didn't tell their staff what was going on properly. Contact details. You should also make sure that your contact details are in your ad and that they're easy to locate. On all of your marketing material and signage, it should be very clear as to how to make contact with you. But don't make the mistake of setting up a press ad or a direct mail and thinking that the most important thing in it is your logo and contact details. In a lot of respects, they don't warrant being at the top of the ad or communication. That's where the headline goes, not your logo. Be consistent with your message. Some businesses also make it difficult for customers to deal with them via phone or email, especially when they're not responding to the inquiries in a friendly or a professional manner, or the way that they are responding isn't reflective of the message that they're putting out there. So always be consistent with your message. Show respect for your product. Very recently, we were contacted by an online business who was trying to solicit us to talk to our customers about a new product for them. Now, instead of giving us an interactive demonstration, and I've got to tell you, they actually brought iPads with them to the meeting, instead of showing us something on the iPad or with an electronic presentation that demonstrated the strengths of their product and how it would solve problems for our clients, they pulled out laminated pieces of paper and walked us through a presentation that way. Ridiculous. And then they said that they would send us some follow-up information via email. Okay, and all we got was a few lines of text and no attachments. Even their emails were presented in a way that looked like it had been set up by a child. It was very embarrassing for their business, and as a result, we weren't motivated to take the discussions any further or present their product to our client, because the way that they presented their product made us question the validity of their product. You need to make sure that the presentation of your products within your business or online, however you're demonstrating your products, is done in a way that's easy for the customer to deal with and is commensurate with the product you're trying to sell. The other thing you need to do in your advertising is make sure that your customers understand when, as in when you're actually open to do business. If it's a website, you're open 24 hours a day. That's fantastic. If it's a bricks and mortar business, then unless you are open 24 hours a day, people need to know when they can come and do business with you. If you don't tell them that, how will they know? Another common mistake is that you don't know what your customer wants or need, and that comes back to something I was mentioning earlier. Ask them, survey them, find out what they need. Finding out what you don't know about them. Do they know all of your products, for example? Are they making assumptions about your products? Feedback forms, surveys, they're all important. That's the easiest way to find out what your customers actually know or want to know about your business. Don't waste your database. Customer databases must be kept up to date. Seriously, in this day and age, there's no excuse for not having a proper database and not communicating electronically with your customers. Doing stuff that's below the line, so not in main media like radio, television or newspaper. This allows you to communicate with your customers in a way that your competitors can't see. So it makes it more difficult for them to know what it is that you're doing. You must have a great database for your business so that you can accurately target people with a specific message. You don't necessarily want to send out the same email about the same product to everybody. Everybody's not interested in exactly the same product. Remember, it's about targeting. That's one of the ways that people actually burn their databases out. You need to communicate with the people who are most likely to want to know about a certain product so that you can communicate with them accurately. Form relationships. Always ask for customer information and use it as an opportunity to reinforce your relationship. Don't just use it as an opportunity to sell people stuff. Firm up the relationship. If you're a car retailer, for example, and you only see someone once every 4 years, you need to be communicating with them more than once every 4 years so that you maintain your relationship. That way, you have an opportunity to actually sell them something when they go to buy their next car. Without that, they'll forget who you are. They won't assume that the person who they bought their car off is still actually there. They won't remember that person's name. They'll probably walk past them in the street and not even remember what they look like. So you need to remind them. You need to have a relationship with them. If you eat a meal in a restaurant and you thought it was fantastic, then recommend it to the database. Let them know that you are part of their community. If you took the kids to see a great movie, give it a recommendation. If you cooked something at home and it was fantastic, share the recipe with them. All of these sort of things are relationship building. They're important. An up-to-date database will allow you to maximise and establish better relationships with your existing customers. It will also give you an opportunity to ask for referrals, and these are important things. Eliminate the perception of risk. Another mistake that people make is that they don't eliminate risk. A lot of people don't buy things because they consider the risk is too big, and sometimes the risk is not big at all. It's just that you've not communicated the solution properly. For example, offering your customers a money-back guarantee without any questions asked is fantastic. If a customer feels that they're likely to be exploited because you don't offer a guarantee, then they won't buy from you. If you think that they're going to exploit you by offering a money-back guarantee, then try that for a month. Test and measure. See if it'll work. I think you'll be surprised. Most people genuinely don't want to do the wrong thing. They just want to receive fair compensation for the money that they've paid for. One of the car dealers that we look after offers a 7-day exchange policy. So if you bought the wrong car, they'll exchange it for another car. No questions asked. They don't want to see you trapped in a car that you're going to spend the next 4 years feeling bad about. They want you in a car that's going to satisfy your needs, because then you'll come back and buy another car from them. And I've got to tell you, even with that particular offer, there are clauses, but they're very clear about it when people buy cars from their company, so that they're able to manage the expectations of their customers. Which leads me to educating your customers. Most businesses don't educate their customer. They don't tell them why their product or service is better. And by doing that, I don't just mean telling them that it's better or it's new or it's improved. Give them reasons, give them details, give them the justification. Show them how what you're telling them is going to benefit them. Make your claims believable for your customer so that they learn that they can trust doing business with you. It takes away from the suspicion in your advertising. I should also mention that if you're having trouble coming up with a unique selling proposition or unique selling position and you'd like some help with it, let me know afterwards and I'll happily email you some information on how to establish your unique selling position. And of course, if you've got any questions above and beyond that, then by all means, I'd be happy to talk to you at a different stage about how we can help your business with that. Now, let's look at the different media types. We'll take them one at a time and look at some of the pitfalls and advantages as we go through them. Direct mail.